Sit back, close your eyes, relax, and listen to this story.
Oh my god, look! It's 6:30. The movie started 10 minutes ago, and nothing is worse than being late for a movie. Dislocating your arm, being buried alive, listening to the NSYNC Christmas album on loop, these things are far less painful than missing the beginning of a movie. To spend $10 and not even know how it all began was pure torment. But nonetheless, despite all of that, Kristen still deemed it necessary to stop dead in her tracks and gawk at something in one of the crane machines full of stuffed animals. What was so important in there, so amazing, that they most certainly would now miss the beginning of the movie? What sort of absurd, adorable, cute stuffed monstrosity had caught her interest this time? What could it possibly be? Whoa. And there it was, pressed against the glass. Not exactly cute or adorable, not some unicorn or fairy. Nothing that would normally catch Kristen's eye at all. But there it was, a plain little human Plushy doll. Dominic's friend, Kristen, a slender girl with long black hair streaked with red, green eyes and a full, pretty face, had her hands and face pressed against the glass like a 5-year-old looking at a puppy in a pet shop. Inside the machine was a doll wearing a black shirt with a white skull in the middle. The doll was pale-colored and topped with a mess of black hair. Below its nose was a little drawn-on mustache, and below the mouth, a little stringy goatee. All in all, a weird little doll. Dom looked down at his own shirt, black with a white skull in the middle, and shook his head in disbelief. Did he really put on this shirt this morning? For some reason, he had trouble remembering. He ran his pale hand through his messy hair and stroked his goatee, deep in thought. Kristen smirked at the similarities that paraded themselves between her friend and his stuffed counterpart. Sure, the shirt could have been a coincidence, but everything else? What are the odds? Glancing at Domenic, she could tell she wasn't the only one that thought so. Wow, it's a plushy me, Domenic said. I know! How crazy is that? Look at it! It's even got your goatee, Kristen marveled. And my shirt! Kristen began to laugh. Oh my god, yeah! Try to win it! There's no way, it's smashed up against the glass. I suck at these things anyway. Aww, but it's so cute in that creepy you kind of way. I can always hit up eBay. Looking at it from a different angle, he was able to see past Grumpy Bear's arm and spot the red and black tag attached to the sleeve of the Dom doll. Despite still being partially covered, he was able to see enough to know that this doll belonged to Dreamweaver. What that was, toy company, band, movie, cartoon, he had no clue. Hey, you ever hear of something called Dreamweaver? He asked. I think it's a TV show. Come on, we're missing our movie. As they reached the door to Theatre 6, he turned to Kristen and asked, You think I can sue for likeness infringement? Yeah, I'm sure, Kristen replied with a dash of sarcasm. That night, Dom sat down amidst all the clutter of his computer desk with one single objective. The screen flickered on and showed the same familiar skull and crossbones background. Well, at least he thought it was familiar. Wasn't it Godzilla? Well, never mind that. It's time to get him a plushy Dom. Dom typed in Dreamweaver plush in the eBay search bar and hit enter. No matches. He then tried Dreamweaver goth doll. No matches. The excitement was quickly wearing away. Dreamweaver toys. Still no matches. Simply out of frustration, he typed in Dom plushie. And, surprise, there were no matches. Dom was ready to reach into the screen and strangle eBay for being so worthless. Giving up on eBay and its whole lot of nothing, he tried searching Dreamweaver on Yahoo. The first link carried him to a page for the TV show Dreamweaver. Dom didn't watch much TV, so he was clueless as to what it was. From the brief plot outline and picture, it was easy for Dom to tell that this was another one of those teen dramedies that had no chance of ever holding his interest. In fact, the site about this show had also lost his interest. With the new depressing knowledge that his likeness was part of a stupid teen bore fest, Dom decided to give his body what it had been crying for, and went to sleep. Dom's cell phone woke him up bright and early, demanding his attention. There was only one person who was allowed to call this early without suffering his wrath. "Hi, Mommy." "Hi, Dommy." "What's up?" he asked. "Oh, just making sure you're coming up to the camp this weekend." "Crap, was that this weekend?" "Yeah, it was. You're still going to make it, right?" Dom's mother asked. "Yeah, I can still make it up there. Got my weeks mixed up, I guess." "Good. See you there. I love you." "I love you too, Mom. Bye." He sat up in bed and looked around, his face contorted and jumbled by the lingering effects of sleep. How the hell did his room get so messy? Clothes were scattered over the floor, Spider-Man and Godzilla posters half hung on the wall, begging for gravity to finish the job. Loose change was spread everywhere, as far as the eye could see. Walking to the shower, he stopped for a second to marvel at the majestically unimpressive view of the north side of Pittsburgh. It was a gloomy winter day in the city, and this part of the city always looked extra gloomy. Everything looked even worse today now that the park, the one bright spot in the area, was replaced by a parking lot. He couldn't even remember when they got rid of the park. As far as he could remember, that park was always there. After the shower, a quick glance at the clock told him it was almost time for work. As much as he really didn't want to go, somebody had to pay for the $1,000 TV in the living room. The next 10 minutes were spent on an apartment-wide manhunt. The fugitive in question were his favorite pair of cargo pants. The escapee somehow eluded him, though. He was forced by time to give up the search and settle for a lesser pair of black slacks. Dom then reached into his drawer and pulled the first black shirt out from the top of the pile. The shirt he grabbed looked new, and even had the tag still on it. Huh? Dom tried to replay the last week's worth of events, trying to remember when he went out and bought this shirt. He honestly couldn't think of any time he did. Maybe it was a gift from someone and he just forgot about it till now. Either way, he had no complaints about it, really. Now showered and dressed, Dom was ready to tackle the day. Wait, where the hell were his shoes? Work that day was the same routine it always was. Head to Giant Eagle, cut meat, bullshit with the other butchers, clean up, more bullshitting, go home. By 3 o'clock, Dom was so anxious to sit down and relax. Anyone passing by might have thought the store was on fire for how fast he shot out of there. 20 minutes later, Dom was through the door of his apartment and making a beeline for the couch. Right now, sitting was the only thing on his mind. He fell into the couch and looked around the room. He thought to himself how unfortunate it was that the room wasn't cleaned by little magical gnomes while he was gone. Maybe it was time to start cleaning. Tomorrow. Or next week, maybe. Dom had almost dozed off while mapping out a 6-month plan for a clean apartment when his phone rang. "Hey babe, what's up?" "Babe?" Kristen replied. "So, how's it going?" "Well, I was calling to see if we were still going to play laser tag tonight." Domenic paused and thought to himself, "We were supposed to go play laser tag? Not like I've got anything better to do." Then to Kristen he said, "Sure." "Oh, okay. So Dom, can you tell me why you aren't here?" "Oh, I was just running late at work. Lots of old people wanted Piggy today, and nightmare it was. Let me hop in the shower and I'll be there in about half an hour, okay?" Fine. Hurry up, though. I really want to shoot you. Thanks. Well, see you in a bit, he said, then quickly caught her before she hung up. Oh, hey, eBay didn't have a single damn one of those dolls. Well, I don't see why it would. For there to be any of those things on eBay, that would imply that someone had to go and buy one in the first place. And honestly, who the hell would buy a doll that looks like you? Then answering herself, no one. That's who, no one. Love you too, babe, Dom retorted. Enough of the babe thing. The next day started as any other would. Getting up, sending out the search party for his missing shoes, and heading to work. It wasn't until Dom got to work that things took a drastic change. What the hell are you doing here? Those words came from a large bear of a man. This gruff individual was the head of the meat department, Dom's boss. He was standing in front of the door to the meat department, wearing an apron covered in some sort of animal blood. I'm supposed to work today, right? At first Dom thought this was normal. A lot of times he forgot when he was supposed to come in and would accidentally come in early. Was I scheduled later? Scheduled? You were fired last week, you dumb shit! What? Dom shouted back, not caring if a scene was about to be caused. When was I fired? You know damn well when! Now get the hell out of here! Dom was about to say something else when he saw his buddy Greg behind the manager shaking his head, trying desperately to shout, no, just leave, with his eyes. He still really wanted to find out why he was fired. But the look on Greg's face was so distressing that he knew he needed to leave quickly. Did you not hear me? Grizzly said in a tone that Dom had never been the victim of before. I said, get out! It was then that Dom noticed his now former boss still clenched his blood-soaked 8-inch-long boning knife. Visions of that knife being stuck somewhere on his body propelled him out of the door without another word. What the hell was going on? When and why was he fired? And the look in his Greg's face was just frightening. What did he do that infuriated his boss like that? His job at Giant Eagle wasn't the greatest, but there was something that he liked to do. And he loved all the people there. They were like a second family to him. The thought of not being able to go there every day and see all his friends was far more crushing than he had expected. He sat against the hood of his car, closed his eyes, and tried to make sense of everything. While this was certainly the worst example, there have been plenty of things going on lately that just didn't sit right with him. New shirts, computer backgrounds changing, plans he never made. All the things that at first just seemed like small lapses of memory were now coupled with this sudden termination into a whole new distressing light. Was he going crazy? Was the stress getting to him? What stress? He was always so laid back, wasn't he? Wasn't he? A thought popped into Dom's head. An absurd thought. The kind of thought that would only make sense in a horror movie. It had something to do with that doll. None of this happened till he saw that plushy Dom. Clueless as to why or how, that doll was the reason for all of this. A shiver snaked down his spine. What if it got worse, and the doll took away more than just his job? What the hell was that? Startled eyes flashed open and darted across the lot to Greg. Hey, I wish I could tell you, I really do, Dom replied to his friends. Well, I don't know if you noticed, but he was ready to stab your scrawny ass, Greg said. Why? Why what? Why would he want to stab you? Why does he hate you aside from the fact that you were messing with his daughter in the goddamn break room? I don't know. What? Me and Shirl? That's why I was fired? No, they fired you because you were a hard worker and a loyal employee. Of course they fired you for that. Then added, what were you thinking anyway? I didn't think you were that stupid. Neither did I. I really don't even like Shirl. I mean, we're friends and all, but I would never. Greg cut him off. Well, you did, so don't even say it. Just get out of here before you know who sees you again. Dom's mind raced faster than his old beat-up Mitsubishi Galant. His thoughts bounced all over the place, trying to fit together the pieces of a puzzle that missed all of them. Did anything really happen between him and Cheryl? And if nothing did, then what really did happen that got him fired? The more he ran through the scenarios, the more he lost himself in his own mental labyrinth. He'd like to think that was the reason he had made so many wrong turns, but something in the back of his head told him that wasn't exactly the case. He'd driven this 10-minute route to and from Giant Eagle countless times. He could probably do it with his eyes closed. It wasn't just his jumbled thoughts, though. The roads were moving. They weren't where they should be. Some went the wrong way, some had different names, and some just disappeared altogether. 30 minutes longer than usual, Dom finally made it back home. Never was he so glad to be back in his own apartment, where everything was still the same. So far. Dom wanted to call Kristen. He didn't so much expect her to believe him about the doll or how everything was changing. He just wanted to hear her voice. Of all his friends, she was the best at keeping him together. No matter the situation, trouble with work or a bad breakup, she became this amazing glue that kept all the threads of his sanity stuck together. Domenic picked up his Samsung cell phone. Scratch that, his iPhone. He had to laugh a little at this. He hated Apple products with a passion unrivaled. This was proof positive that something was going on. His laugh held a strange blend of satisfaction and madness. The phone rang several times before Kristen's evil twin sister, who only knew how to say hello and leave your name and number at the beep, answered. He left a quick plea to return his call, and then sat down with a headache as his only companion. Little termites of doubt and confusion started to burrow their way deeper and deeper into his skull. They ate clean through the support structures that held up logic and reason. His eyes leapt from object to object, interrogating each one, trying to pry loose a difference. They never waited long enough for an answer, though. They kept moving in an endless cycle of accusations and wild questioning. Did you always sit on that shelf? Were you always that color? Did you always hold that pose? Everything was different. What was it? It was all becoming too much. The longer he sat there scrutinizing every detail of his home, the more certain he became that those details were changing. And the more things changed, the more uncertain he became of those things. His brain screamed for escape, his heart wailed against the walls of its bony prison. His lungs clutched each breath of air like it was his last. Just close your eyes, Domenic thought. Make everything go away. Not even a second had passed before he realized what a horrible mistake that was. Once he closed the shutters on the outside world, those termites went into a hellish overdrive. What was going to happen when he opened his eyes? Was anything still going to be the same? What if he wasn't even in the same room or the same building anymore? What if he just stopped existing altogether? He'd open his eyes on a black void darker than the one behind his lids. So there he sat, for what seemed like hours, terrified at the prospect of answering any of those questions. The fear was gnawing at him like a rat eating through drywall. He couldn't sit there forever with his eyes closed, though. He just couldn't. So building up every ounce of courage God willingly gave him, he lifted up one eyelid just a crack to see the room around him. The thin seam revealed a room identical to the one he left behind. Now, one eye was fully open, and he saw things exactly the same as they were before. Both eyes open, he began to breathe a little easier. Yes, everything was still the same. Dom started to think that maybe all of this was just in his head. It was very possible that he was just overreacting. Sure, some things seemed different, and God knows that the incident at work was weird. But was it really that weird? Cheryl, being the boss's daughter, always kept Dom at a distance, but that didn't mean he wasn't attracted to her. And he could tell by the way she looked at him sometimes that she mirrored that sentiment. Would it be such a stretch to think the two of them finally acted on some impulse? The more he thought about it, the more the blurry, pulsing outlines of that memory took shape. First the laughing and joking turning into lust and hunger, and then the embarrassment and fear of being caught. The images flickered out of focus like a reel of film on a projector. The memory still existed. Dom felt oddly more relaxed by the conclusion that his memory was just failing him. Doctors could help him with memory loss a lot better than a fluctuating existence. He sat up and made his way to the kitchen. A beer sounded really good right now. He didn't make it all the way to the fridge though. He was stopped dead in his tracks by what he saw in the bathroom. He looked into the small room and stared into the mirror above the sink. Why was he wearing shorts? He had long black cargo pants on this morning. It was winter in Pittsburgh, for God's sake. It was freezing outside. His lips quivered under an intense pressure. Very slowly, he turned around and looked out the window. The dam burst and his screams flooded out. The sun was out, birds chirped, and the trees were a bright green. It was summer in Pittsburgh. Dom's brain felt like a rubber band stretched beyond its limit. In fact, he was certain he actually heard a snapping sound. Shortly after witnessing the more than slight change in weather, Dom shot out of his apartment. His new plan was to go to the bar that he and Kristen often frequented, in hopes to drink himself into oblivion. Maybe Kristen would even be there. He was traveling there on foot. Driving a car through an ever-changing world would be about as easy as finishing a maze with no eyes. His city was livelier than it ever had been. The entirety of Pittsburgh looked like it had a shiny new coat of paint. Even the people looked pleasant. It was like every single one of them knew they were going to be getting their pictures taken and wanted to look their absolute best. Surprisingly enough, Dom was able to make it all the way to Market Square without a single problem. Market Square was a little area of the city that had some trees and greenery planted, along with a mini concert stage in the center. The entire area was surrounded by small restaurants and coffee shops and bars, chief amongst them his destination, the Ale House. It was situated between a seafood joint called the Oyster House and a bakery that made some damn good muffins. It was rather hidden, since the entrance was just a single door with a black awning, with the barely noticeable words, Ale House, written on them. Dom walked towards the entrance, salivating as his mind raced ahead to the beer already pouring down his throat. His hand reached out blindly to swing open the door. All he managed to grab, however, was air. The door was gone. There was just a brick wall between the bakery and the seafood place. There was no sign whatsoever that the Ale House even existed. He stared at the wall, trying to recall all his fond memories of his favorite bar, all of the great people he met there. That's when he began to feel the tears welling up in his eyes. Because no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't do it. He couldn't remember a single damn thing about the bar that should have been there. Not even the name. Whatever it was called, it just vanished. The Fifth Avenue Plaza was lined with shops featuring designer clothing and jewelry, and walking through the plaza were those people that could afford to shop in such stores. Everything in the mini-mall had a shiny golden quality to it. Even the magazine stand looked like you needed a 100k salary to shop there. Dom went there not because he needed to buy a new suit and tie, but because the place looked unchanged. Everyone still had that picture-perfect look to them, and the place itself looked magnificent in its own right. But these things were nothing new for a place like this. If things were different, like they were with the rest of the city, Dom didn't notice, and that was a blessing for his fragile wits. Dom had been in this plaza a few times before. One of the places he remembered interesting him was a toy store that sold antique and collectible toys, as well as the newer mainstream ones. It seemed like a good place to keep his mind occupied. The store was on the second floor near some Italian restaurant. Rounding the corner from the escalator, he saw that the toy store was just ahead. As he was getting close, though, a girl's excited shouts lassoed him to the spot. "Oh my god! Mom, look!" Dom turned around to see what all the fuss was about, only to find out that the fuss was about him. Dom stared at the young girl with one of the most confused looks ever smeared across his face. The girl continued to shout and point nonetheless. "It's Alex Ashton!" he squealed. All the words were caught in his throat. He just stood by helplessly while she continued her little scene. "Oh my god, I love you! Can I have your autograph, please?" "We're sorry to bother you, but Jessica loves your show. If it's not too much trouble, we would really appreciate it. Maybe even get a picture?" The screaming girl's mother said, already pulling out her camera phone. "Oh my god, can we really get a picture?" the girl said, practically levitating. Dom finally snapped out of his stupor just as she moved up next to him for the picture. He backed away, arms raised in surrender. "Please, I'm sorry for the confusion, but I'm not that guy. My name's Domenic. I'm sorry if I look like him and all, but..." "Who are you kidding? Of course you're Alex," Jessica replied. The mother added, "Well, if it's too much of an inconvenience, just say so. Don't stop making up stories and giving us fake names. Besides, you think you could be smarter than to give us your character's name? Now, all we're asking for is a minute of your time. You owe her for all the hours she spends in front of that TV watching your show." Dom wanted to ask, "What show?" But once again the words were trapped in his throat. All he could hear was your character's name repeated over and over again in his head. While his brain skipped like a broken record, the young girl had already wrapped her arms around him and stared contentedly at the camera. "Smile," the mother said. This was obviously directed at Dom, seeing as how if her daughter smiled any more, it would probably tear the skin on her face. More of a reflex than a conscious effort, Dom's lips moved upward into what would have been a smile, if not for the rest of his face contradicting it with a look of total bafflement. Picture taken, Dom's face returned to its normal position as he stared off into space. Picture taken, Dom's face returned to its normal position as he stared off into space. A couple minutes passed before he finally made it back down to Earth and realized where he was. By this time, a lot of people were looking at him. Whether it was because he looked like some famous actor or because he looked like a brain-dead zombie, he had no clue. Feeling sicker than embarrassed, Dom started for the toy store where there wouldn't be so many eyes on him. He didn't make it very far though when something else stopped him dead in his tracks. And damned if he didn't reclaim his new trademark brain-dead zombie look. There, in the window to the toy store, amongst all the other dolls, action figures, games and novelty trinkets, sat a little plushy doll with messed up hair, a goatee and a black skull t-shirt. It just sat there and returned the stare that Dom gave it. And this time, he could have sworn that the doll had the slightest smirk on his face. An exhausted, mentally drained, pretty much insane man fell into Dom's computer chair. He ran almost the entire way back to his apartment from the shopping center, though he wasn't even sure how he got there. Nonetheless, he had one thing on his mind: that demon doll. He saw it in the store, which means there were more than one of them after all. The first thing he thought to do was check eBay again. Sure, there wasn't any on there last time, but last time he had a job and his name wasn't Alex Ashton. He started just like he did last time, by typing Dreamweaver Plushy. This time, however, he got plenty of hits. There were several dolls on the page, male and female. One little man doll was wearing a polo shirt with thick-rimmed glasses. There was a female doll wearing a little miniskirt and blue streaks across her eyes that resembled eyeshadow. There were other dolls too, but none of them really held his attention. He needed to narrow his search. His fingers hesitated to type the words, but curiosity beat out fear. Dom Plushy. 78 matches. All of them that cursed doll. The description included little snippets like, from the hit show, now you can have Dom with you all the time, and great collector's item. This couldn't be right. It couldn't. How can the damn thing not only look like him, but have the same name too? Despite knowing it would only make things worse, Dom went to imdb.com to check out the cast info for Dreamweaver. Scrolling down the list of names of teen stars he never heard of, he spotted the one name that did sound familiar. Alex Ashton. And on the show Dreamweaver, he played the character of Domenic Betters. No, this was wrong. All wrong, or it was a coincidence. An amazingly insane coincidence. He would have continued thinking that, if not for the picture he saw further down the page. There, amongst the ragtag group of teens, stood a guy who could have been his twin. Hair, goatee, clothing, eye collar, scar on his right hand, stance, smile. He was all the same, exactly the same. A tidal wave of maddening terror flooded his veins and his head. He wanted to keep lying to himself. He wanted to believe it was all a cruel joke, that the photo was done in Photoshop, and that all this would end with his friends popping out from their hiding spots and yelling surprise. But despite how hard he tried, he couldn't do it. The truth had been punching him in the face all day. What that truth was, he still didn't really know. What he did know was, if he took much more of this, he would be on the ground in the fetal position, crying. Someone else had to know what's going on. Someone had to. He couldn't be the only one who witnessed these changes. He grabbed his phone and went to the address book. He went down the list of names looking for Shirl. She was the first person he thought to call because of her involvement in one of the more outlandish occurrences. He found the name and hit the call button. Or rather, he tried to. Just as he was about to make the call, the name itself disappeared. Dom thought his eyes were just playing tricks on him, but that wasn't the case. He scrolled up and down through the S's on his phone several times. There was no sign of her. And shortly after, other names started to disappear as well. His entire list of contacts was vanishing. No, stop! More names disappeared. Please, stop! Still more vanished. No, no, no! It wasn't just that their names and phone numbers were vanishing. They were vanishing. Why? Why are you doing this? He asked the phone. His only reply was a completely blank screen. Not a single name or number remained. They were all gone now. Everyone he knew. Everyone he cared about, taken away. There were so many people in his life that he cared about, and that cared about him. It was such a wonderful feeling to know that others wanted him to be a part of their lives. Now, what did he have? The leading part in a goddamn sitcom, not even that. He was the part. He was nothing but some bastard's idea. He no longer belonged with his family and friends. He belonged on the wall of some bratty girl's room, torn from her stupid magazine. Out of desperation, he dialed the one number that he still knew of by heart, his mother's. Each ring of the phone sunk him lower and lower into a miserable grave. That's when he heard one of the most wonderful things in the world. Her voice. It was her answering machine, but it was still his mother's voice. Not all was lost. He hung up and tried again. He wanted to speak to her. He wanted to hear her voice. He wanted her to tell him everything was okay, that he was still him, that everything was just fine. Hello? It was her! It was her! It was Mum! Mum, hey Mum, how are you? Oh my God, I'm so happy. Hello? Hey Mom, it's me! I'm sorry, who is this? It's me, your son! Oh, you must have the wrong number, I'm sorry. No, I don't. Is the connection bad? Can't you hear me? It's Domenic. Domenic? I'm sorry, but you have the wrong number. Don't you recognize me, damn it? It's your son! Dom pleaded, the words struggling to escape his throat. I'm sorry, but I don't have a son by that name. He may have said more, but it didn't matter anymore. The hammer made out of the words, I don't have a son, destroyed Dom's skull and ruined what was left of his sanity. All he saw now was that bastard doll smiling at him from his computer screen. Smiling because it had taken everything. Smiling because it had won. God damn it! Dom hurled the phone at the door with all his might. The phone exploded into confetti of electronic bits. The screen, however, was unfazed. The doll kept smiling. Dom shot across the room, grabbed the monitor by the sides and began to shake it violently. Stop! Just leave me alone! Just stop, damn it! Jesus Christ, just stop! The longer the doll continued to stare and smile, the harder he shook. He shook the monitor till the plastic stand it rested on snapped off. He shook the monitor like the doll inside was alive. He shook till tears filled his eyes and his shouts became gut-wrenching sobs. He shook till the world around him began to fade. He shook till the lights went out. Dom woke up lying beneath his computer desk. It felt like little men were inside his skull, hammering away with mallets. Slowly, he pulled himself out from under the desk and looked up. The computer monitor was still in place with the IMDb website still on the screen. Dom sat up and wondered if he just dreamt what had happened. Then he saw the broken cell phone. He pulled himself up into his chair and looked at the page featuring all the info about the show Dreamweaver. The curiosity of a man who knew he was already dead took hold of him. He wanted to peer into the belly of the beast before it swallowed him. Dom scrolled down past the cast info, where still more categories such as quotes, trivia and rumors remained. He clicked on the link for rumors. Before him now was a list of different speculations and such about the show. Most of it was just banter about who would be dating who, or who would be stabbing who in the back next season. Dom was ready to dismiss it all and check another part of the site when something caught his eye. At the bottom of the page, the name Alex Ashton was mentioned. He scrolled down to see what it had to say about the actor he'd been mistaken for. Alex Ashton may be on his way out. Sources close to the show have been saying that Alex is done with the show and ready to move on up to major motion pictures. The decision to do so came with very little warning and left the creative crew behind the show in a jam. One source indicates that his character, Domenic Betters, may be killed off in the season finale. No. His eyes darted around. The room was different, totally different. No, no, no! Different furniture, different colors, different layout, everything was different. No! He could finally see it now. Everything was melting and reshaping, becoming new and blooming into something else. Everything pulsed and vibrated and flowed like an amorphous sea. His world changed right before his very eyes. Eyes that now held the flicker of a projector reel. What's happening to me? Dom didn't wait any longer. He ran out of the building at breakneck speed, screaming as no vocal cords have ever been forced to scream. The moon glowed picture perfect in the picture perfect autumn night sky. A wind carried with it the dying leaves of the season, throwing them around with reckless abandon. Dom leapt into his shiny new Volkswagen and took a long drag from the bottle of rum he had been working on for the past hour. He didn't know where he was going, and he didn't care. What did it matter anyway? He already knew the ending. Kristen lay in her bed that night, wide awake. He had just watched the season finale of Dreamweaver. Now all she could do was toss and turn. The commercials weren't kidding when they said it would leave you in shock. She was so shocked she couldn't even sleep. He was her favorite character. How could they just kill him off in a car accident? Sure, she liked other characters in other movies and shows that had died, but it was different. To Kristen, it felt like she had just lost a friend. A really good friend she had known for years. Someone who had always been there for her. Why she felt this way was a mystery. He was, after all, nothing more than a piece of fiction on a show. But still, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was different somehow. That she lost someone important and that there would never be anyone like him again. With a sigh, she resolved that these feelings would go away after time. That thought in her head, she rolled over, closed her eyes, and snuggled up with a little smiling Plushy doll.